Formula One is a sport that just keeps on changing. The teams change, the people change, the drivers change, even the cars change. Everything changes. Though at least there is a few constants, being that all the cars need to have at least 4 wheels on the ground, and they need to have internal combustion engines of some sort, even if it's a gas turbine. When we look at Formula One cars, we often think about the absolute best, such as the F2004, the FW14B, the MP4/4, and the more recent Mercedes W05. And then we tend to look at the absolute worst, the Life L190, the Andrea Moda S921. Typically, we're always looking at the best cars from the most successful teams, and the worst cars from the absolute worst teams. But rarely do we really look at the worst cars from the most successful teams and the best cars from the least successful teams. Diamonds in the rough, so to speak. We're going to start off this series with a look at a team that has more recently been creating quite a few shitboxes. A team that has quite the championship pedigree underneath its belt. That team is the third most successful Formula One team in history, Williams Racing Engineering. The team has been on a more or less downhill slope since 1997, but things really started to kick off in 2005, with only a brief stint of relative success in 2014 and 2015. It could be said that Williams' first crap car was its first, the 1978 FW06. However, we're not really going to count the first cars from these teams, as they usually tend to be not as good as their later counterparts. So let's go back in time to 1997. Jacques Villeneuve wins the 1997 Drivers' World Championship, and Williams comes first place in the Constructors. They had 123 points, which was quite a lot considering the old point system they used back then, when only the top 6 places received points. However, Williams' engine supplier, Renault, announced it was pulling out of Formula One at the end of the 1997 season, which left Williams in a rather precarious position. They had no engines available for the next year. Not only that, but designer Adrian Newey left the team to go to McLaren. These factors combined meant that the following 1998 FW20 was, well, less than good. Designed by Gavin Fisher and powered by what was essentially a rebadged version of the previous year's engine, the FW20 only managed to score 38 points in the 1998 season. This was still enough for third, though it was a very distant third, as second placed Ferrari finished with 133 points. Williams was nowhere in the title fight. And the same thing happened the next year, in 1999. This wasn't so much due to the car, however. This was more due to the fact that driver Alex Minardi really could not get to grips with the car, his teammate Ralf Schumacher scoring all 35 of the team's points, including 3 podiums. However, in the chaotic 99 season, those 35 points were just not enough to put the team anywhere near third. They were even overtaken by Stewart by just a single point. They only came 5th. But their fortunes picked up with the BMW partnership, and until 2005. The 2005 BMW Williams FW27 wasn't a bad car by any means, but it certainly wasn't doing particularly well, and eventually the Williams BMW partnership came crashing down, which left Williams in yet another precarious position, as in 2006 they had no engines. This was soon remedied by Williams buying into a customer contract with Cosworth, and apparently the Cosworth engine wasn't that bad in 2006, at least in terms of power. In terms of reliability, however, well, Williams were exploding left, right and centre. Not only that, but the car really didn't handle very well. Yes, it had Bridgestone tyres, yes, it had two pretty good drivers under its belt, one future champion, Nico Rosberg, but the car was a dog to drive and it just kept blowing up. And so, Williams had their worst season finish since their first one in 1978. They only finished 8th in the Constructors' Championship, with a grand total of 11 points. Things probably couldn't get much worse for Williams, at least that's probably how it felt at the time. They had a much better 2007 season, returning to 4th on the Constructors' Championship after they made the switch to Toyota engines, but they went back down again in 2008 with the FW30, only scoring 26 points. Better than in 2006, but they were still 8th in the championship. That's still not great. It at least managed to score a podium or two, but that was it. After the FW30 in 2008, Williams didn't score another podium for 4 years, until 2012, when Pastor Maldonado won his miracle win in Spain. Williams had firmly become entrenched in the midfield, but surely things couldn't get worse. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course they got worse. After a meh 2009 season and a decent 2010 season, along came the 2011 season. The Williams FW33. Painted in a pseudo Rothmans livery, driven by Pastor Maldonado and Rubens Barrichello, the FW33 marked the beginning of Williams' downfall into becoming a backmarker team. In fact, this car pretty much was the team's first ever season as a backmarker. Even in their first ever season, they were still at least in the midfield. This car, the FW33, was constantly finishing outside of the points. It only managed to score 5 points, the best scoring position being 9th place, twice, at Monaco and Canada, and a single 10th place in Belgium. Again, some of this was down to the drivers. Crash Tour Maldonado, for one thing. And then, once again, there was the Cosworth engine. After Toyota pulled out, they had to go back to Cosworth, and this time the Cosworth engine was just not as good an engine as the Ferraris, or the Mercedes, or the Renaults, now that they'd come back. That, and the car was just terrible in general. A dog to drive, driven by a rookie who couldn't help but crash, and powered by an underpowered engine. It had effectively become the Minardi of its day. 5 points in 9th place. It was the team's worst finish since 1978, and the fewest amount of points the team had ever scored in its history. 2012 was better for Williams. They still only managed to come 8th place, but the 2012 season was really quite chaotic, so it's remarkable they did that well. In fact, it's remarkable they didn't do better, because, yeah, Maldonado may have actually managed to win a race in the FW34, but that season really shows just how bad of a driver he really was, because that win was one of just 5 points finishes he managed to get that season, whilst his teammate Bruno Senna had twice that. But hey, they were scoring points again. They came 8th, sure, still not great, but they had 76 points. Surely they were on the up and up, especially because they were now using Renault engines again. Surely This meant Williams would soon be taking up the fight at the front of the field in their rightful place on the winner's podium. And then 2013 happened. It seemed that all the progress Williams made in 2012 had been lost. Their freak win in Spain considered a conspiracy, and all that just picked up when 2013 happened. It was the team's equal worst season. 5 points once again, 9th place once again, but this time they could only get points finishes twice, rather than 3 times as they did in 2011. To truly explain just how bad the FW35 was, you need only look at Valtteri Bottas's qualifying attempts in the 2013 Canadian Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas qualified his Williams FW35 in 3rd place. Truly, that must mean he was going to score some good points. Yet, when the race happened the next day, he was a lap down in 14th place. Need I say any more? 2013 was an unmitigated disaster for Williams. Could things get any worse? Well, things got better before they got worse. In 2014, the technical regulations changed, as we all know, and suddenly the Mercedes hybrid engine became the best on the grid. And Williams, who signed a deal for Mercedes engines, replacing their Renault power supply, shot up to 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, even managing to score a pole position, though a win was a bit out of their reach, though they nearly got it. They nearly got one. And again in 2015, they didn't get a pole position this time, but they so very nearly got a win. At their home race, no less. But in 2016, things started to go downhill again, and the team that was scoring podiums regularly was suddenly surpassed 4th place in the championship by Force India. Their dual 3rd place finishes in 2014 and 15 was largely due to the faltering of 2 of the current top 3 teams. First, Ferrari in 2014 struggling with the new hybrid regulations, and then Red Bull in 2015 with their Renault engines not really doing all that great. And even Lotus knew that, themselves switching from Renault power to Mercedes. But 2016, the engine playground had evened out quite a bit. Ferrari had a much better engine, though the car was still a bit of a dog to drive. And the Renault engines became a bit more reliable and a lot more powerful. With the top 3 teams now having their act together, Williams found themselves fighting for 4th place, and they lost it to Force India. They came 5th after just a single podium in Canada. It was a solid 5th though, 138 points, and they managed to at least come 5th again in 2017 with the FW40. But this time it wasn't so secure. This time, in 2017, the FW40 only managed 83. Okay, could be better, but surely they'll stay 5th for another year in a row, maybe? No. That's when we move on to the 2018 FW41. Designed by Paddy Lowe. Oh dear. Paddy Lowe, former Mercedes engineer, he'd created some of the race-winning Mercedes designs. And yet, here he was at Williams, creating something that wasn't working. In 2018, Williams found themselves struggling to get out of Q1. They managed it a few times, but I don't remember if they ever got into Q3, and I don't think they did. They had one rookie under their belt, Sergei Sirotkin, and one driver who'd been with them for barely a year, Lance Stroll. people were thinking that he'd proved his worth with that podium in Azerbaijan in 2017, but had he really proved his worth? I don't think so. The 2018 car was terrible, utterly terrible. It only managed to score 7 points the entire season, 2 more than their worst performances in 2011 and 2013. And 3 of those points were practically gifted to them on a silver platter when Romain Grosjean got disqualified from the Italian Grand Prix. Actually, come to think of it, that was only 1 point, but still, out of the 21 races of the 2018 season, 42 possible points finishes, they only scored 3 times. And of course, one of those was gifted from a penalty. They finished 10th in the championship. Their worst finish ever. And that might not sound bad, considering that Formula 1 has a maximum grid of 26 cars, but there hasn't been a full 26 car grid since 1995. And the 3 teams that had been below Williams before, Marussia/Manor, Caterham and HRT, were gone. That 10th place was dead last. 10th out of 10. But every cloud has a silver lining, right? Paddy Lowe is a good designer. He would sort things out. The 2019 car would be much better, right? Oh, well, guess what season we're in? 2019. How do I start with this season? First, Williams were late to the party, to the pre-season testing. The car just wasn't ready in time. And then they showed up to pre-season testing and they were the slowest by far. And then we all went to Australia and they were the slowest by far. If you want to talk about just how slow the 2019 Williams is, just look at their 2017 qualifying times and their 2018 qualifying times for the Australian Grand Prix. In 2017, Felipe Massa qualified his Williams FW40 in Q3 in 1 minute 24.443 seconds. He qualified 7th. Okay, that's not bad. Let's move on to 2018. Driver Lance Stroll qualified his Williams FW41 in Q2 in 14th place at 124.2. In 2019, George Russell qualified his Williams FW42 in 19th place at 124.360. He got slower. if anything, it's consistency, but they just haven't gone anywhere. It's like they've made 2017 cars in 2018 and 2019. It's not 2017 anymore, Williams. You can start making 2019 cars now. 2019 is no doubt Williams' worst season on record. It took them until round 11 to score a point. 11 rounds to score 1 measly point, and once again that was because of a penalty. Both of the Alfa Romeos getting 30-second penalties and promoting Robert Kubica into the points. 1 point! Is there a silver lining? Perhaps there is. In Hungary, round 12, the very next race, George Russell seemed to be fighting for a place in Q2. Not bad. And during the race, he was fighting to keep his place. He actually managed to finish in the position that he originally qualified. He got promoted up to 15th place on the grid, but he did qualify in 16th, and he finished 16th. He was 2 laps down, but still, he could have finished a bit higher. Will Williams be scoring more points this season? Who knows? Things have gone majorly wrong for Williams, and though they're apparently not struggling for money, fact is, all that money they have, it's not got them good cars. Where do Williams' fortunes lie in 2020 and 2021 and beyond? Who knows? Have a good one, folks. And until next time, good night.